All right, so this is Colossians 1:15 through 23. He is the image of the invisible God, the firstborn of all creation. For by him all things were created, in heaven and on earth, visible and invisible, whether thrones or dominions or rulers or authorities. All things were created through him and for him. And he is before all things, and in him all things hold together. And he is the head of the body, the church. He is the beginning, the firstborn from the dead, that in everything he might be preeminent. For in him all the fullness of God was pleased to dwell, and through him to reconcile to himself all things, whether on earth or in heaven, making peace by the blood of his cross. And you, who were once alienated and hostile in mind, doing evil deeds, has now reconciled in his body of flesh by his death, in order to present you holy and blameless and above reproach before him. If indeed you continue in the faith, stable and steadfast, not shifting from the hope of the gospel that you heard, which has been proclaimed in all creation under heaven, and of which I, Paul, became a minister.
The Son is the image of the invisible God, the firstborn over all creation. For in him all things were created, things in heaven and on earth, visible and invisible, whether thrones or powers or rulers or authorities. All things have been created through him and for him. He is before all things, and in him all things hold together. And he is the head of the body, the church. He is the beginning and the firstborn from among the dead, so that in everything he might have the supremacy. For God was pleased to have all his fullness dwell in him, and through him to reconcile to himself all things, whether things on earth or things in heaven, by making peace through his blood shed on the cross. Once you were alienated from God and were enemies in your minds because of your evil behavior. But now he has reconciled you by Christ's physical body through death to present you holy in his sight, without blemish and free from accusation. If you continue in your faith, established and firm, and do not move from the hope held out in the gospel. This is the gospel that you heard and that has been proclaimed to every creature under heaven, and of which I, Paul, have become a servant.
Awesome. Thank you very much. So we're continuing on from the previous passage, and just for the sake of context, I'll read verse 13 and 14. Since we start off verse 15 with he is the image, well, we want to make sure we reestablish who is the he talking here. So going from verse 13, he has delivered us from the domain of darkness and transferred us to the kingdom of his beloved Son, meaning the Son of God, Jesus Christ, in whom we have redemption, the forgiveness of sins. So as we kick off this section, we just want to remember that the he being talked about primarily here is Jesus, as the Son of God. That's continuing on from the previous section. All right, so repeated words and phrases. There's a lot, so you call them out, tell me what they are, and how many times that we see them. Doesn't have to be a particularly significant or special word, just a word that's repeated, or phrase.
The word everything.
Okay, how many times?
In 16, and then again in 18.
All right, for a total of 2.
And then in 20.
Okay.
Yeah.
3 times. All right, what else?
Firstborn.
Okay. Yep. All right.
15 and 18 that I see right away. That might be it.
Okay.
Invisible.
Okay.
15, 16. I don't know.
All right.
I think that's it.
There's creation in verse 15, and then there's created in 16 twice, and then creation again in verse 23.
Yep. All right, that's a total of 3 times, or 4 times, yes. Okay.
The word repeated most throughout the entire passage is all.
Yes.
Verse 15, all creation. Twice in verse 16 with all things. Twice in 17 with all things. 19 says all the faithfulness. And then 20 again with all things.
I counted 7.
It was on 23.
I counted seven times. Sorry, not verse 7. I counted the word all 7 times. Is that, y'all have that as well?
I got 8.
You got 8 for all?
I think so.
UESV?
Yep.
All right.
7 or
8. It's okay. It hammers home the point that it's really relevant. I also included the phrase all things because I think that's going to be relevant throughout our discussion on this passage. I had all things in 4, 16, 17, and 20.
Earth.
You said earth? Okay.
16 and 20.
Total of 2.
Yeah.
All right.
Heaven.
Yep. 16 and 20.
And 23.
I said the same thing, everything and all things.
Okay, so that's what that last one's a translation thing, because I got in all creation. I think you got on all the earth.
I've
Is
got,
that right?
it says after the proclaim to every creature under heaven, but it may say creation.
I got in all creation under heaven. That's what I got. So I think we have that here. But still, what are the other heavens? Is 16 and 20, right? All right, and then I also added, because it's a phrase, heaven and earth. All right. What else?
Gospel.
All right, where you got that at?
Twice in 23.
Okay. I only got that once. The hope of the gospel that you've heard, which proclaimed in all creation under heaven.
It probably just merit. It's just a translation.
Okay.
Yeah, because I got it in IV too.
Okay. Interesting. Okay. How about reconcile? Did we do that yet? Reconcile or reconciled? All right. What else repeated words or phrases?
More?
Do you want to count all the pronouns?
Yes,
referring
we
to God?
do. We do want to.
So his, him, himself, father. That's
Yep. So he, him, his, himself. I put all in one category.
yeah. So 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20. Yeah, there's like, except I think at least in my translation, they're using everything except verse 23. And
Every bit of it.
1, 2,
I'm just gonna put
Just
everywhere.
write the whole chapter.
Yes.
5, 6, 7. Yeah.
I counted 15 of he, him, his, himself. Total combining. I had 15.
I'll take your word for it.
I counted
That's where I'm at.
16.
15.
Yeah.
I agree with y'all.
You have ESV?
Yeah.
I'll go with you. 16.
What's up, Brian?
I was doing this at
There's
like
a lot.
11:30 at night, so if I miscounted, I'm just gonna let myself slide on that. Yeah. So I think normally our practice is to examine which things are said the most. Gee, I wonder what we'll circle it there. All right. Anything else? I had a couple phrases related to this I also included because I think they are going to be relevant to the passage. So I had he is. I had that in 15, 17, and 18. Well, phrases too. Repeated words in phrase. So he is. So that's a total of 5. Total, and then in him. I had 17 and 19. And then I think that's everything I had on my list, except for I had the word body in 18 and 22. All right. Any other words or phrases repeated that we have not put up there so far? Yeah, a lot of repeated words and phrases this time. Last passage, it wasn't quite like this. So, based on what we've got up here, what would y'all say we are going to be focusing a lot of our time on, or attention on, rather?
Jesus.
Yes, but interestingly, his name is not up here. So,
God the Father.
So,
He.
yeah, so he. All right, and then what
I'm not
else?
All
Would,
the
would
things.
heaven and earth be important?
Yep. So I'm gonna group those with one circle, and then someone else said all. Yep. Like that. We'll do.
Just do an arrow to them, they're like the
Yeah,
same thing.
we'll do that because it's kind of like. All right. Can I draw an arrow today? All right. What else? Any others, or do you think this is enough for our focus? I would add this one. I would add that because it's going to connect a lot with this and with this. All right. Okay. No other comments? All right. So normally I don't have to erase the board this early, but we'll Andrew or you got it. All right. So next up we got our comparisons and contrasts. So does Paul here compare or contrast any ideas, material things? Does he compare or contrast anything with itself in this passage? Comparisons and contrasts. Ideas that are compared, states, materials, anything like that he compares one to another or contrasts them, showing their differences.
Heaven and earth.
Heaven and earth. Well, is that a comparison or contrast, or is that more of like an expression? So I'm drawing this back from our time in Jonah, where that's used. I believe it was Jonah, where that's used as an idiom to just mean everything. So I wouldn't necessarily say that's a comparison or contrast, but I think you're close to one though. The first one that I noticed was also in verse 16, right after that.
You're talking about
Visible
principalities,
and invisible.
Visible and invisible.
principalities and powers.
Let's get to that one next,
Okay.
and then after that. You know, we can put heaven and earth here, because if we're going to include this, we'll include heaven and earth. Okay, and then Andrew?
Principalities and powers.
Okay, is that, I'm guessing that's a translation difference?
That's how it reads in 16 for my version. Thrones or dominions or principalities or powers.
Okay.
Rulers or authorities is what mine says. Say the same thing.
Okay, we have one.
Track with me for a sec, but creation versus creator.
Okay,
In the first verse it says he's the image of the invisible God, the firstborn of all creation. In him all things were created. So it's placing Jesus above creation.
outside of it, yes, because he can't be in creation if he's the one creating it.
Yeah, but it's above creation.
I think what we're saying is he can't be in creation because if he precedes it, but he's obviously that places him above it necessarily. So, all right, yeah, but creation, creator, and then how would you like me to phrase that part down here? Like Jesus above or superior? Is that okay? Alright, what else?
He compares Jesus as the head of the body.
Yes. Yes. And then I'll add church. Okay? Alright, very good. I've got one more in the text, but we've also hit on some other ideas here too, so please keep shouting it out. What else? Mine's in verse 21 in the ESV.
Which works for versus being reconciled?
Not exactly. I had
Is that what
you were once alienated and hostile, now reconciled.
Okay.
And so contrasting being alienated and hostile
Versus reconciled.
reconciled. And then I'll add also holy and blameless, because he has those as well. All right. Any others that I might have missed or we might not have said yet? Okay. Yep. So a lot more. It just seems like this passage has had a lot more on this end of this, the initial end of things than we had in the last passage, which I'm excited about, because hopefully that means we'll have a lot to talk about when we get to the original audience and our personal reflection and application. So I'm excited about that. All right, comparisons and contrasts. Next is commands and promises. So everyone remember our definition of a promise. We have a future time element, or if we're kind of on the fence, we can talk through it, but any commands in Scripture or promises? You want to identify any commands and promises? Yeah. Someone was saying something.
23.
How does your 23 read?
Well, I guess it's kind of two-parter.
Yeah.
I guess it would maybe start in 22. If you continue in your faith, establish and firm, and do not move from the hope held out in the gospel. So that's this will happen if you do this, which would be a promise, I guess. This is a future tense thing.
Yeah. So it's a little wordy. I included that under. I actually included under command to continue in the faith.
Oh.
But I do see what you're saying. So we can kind of, it's kind of a mix there, because I do see what you're saying, because it says he is now reconciled in his body of flesh, but in order to present you holy and blameless and above reproach, if indeed you continue in the faith. It's one of those already not yet situations, because he has done this. He has reconciled you through his death and your faith, but he's also given the command to continue in the faith going forward. So it's kind of an already not yet situation, but I'm with you on that. Okay. And for that reason, I put the reconciling through his body of death, I put that under truth claim, because he's asserting that that's true, that he's done that. But the way that it's phrased, I get it. Any other commands or promises we see here? I didn't have any others, so if y'all have any, we'll add them up. All right. Very good. Commands and promises. Andrew, you're gonna need to take a picture of this one, because next is truth claims, and this is probably where we'll end up getting stuck for the rest of the class today. Truth claims. So no truth claim too small. So go through it once we're good, Andrew. All right. So I'm gonna erase this, and we will just we'll take it from the top.
Okay. Verse by verse.
Yep, verse by verse, word by word, phrase by phrase, because this passage is full of them. All right, so truth claims. This is part of, this isn't the entirety of Paul's message in this book, but it's a really big part. So we're going to have a lot of these because he's laying out his what he's trying to communicate to them. All right, so someone start us off.
He is the image of the invisible God.
Yeah, so Jesus is the image of God. Okay.
Firstborn of all creation.
Yeah. So I don't have this everywhere on here, but I did want to make a comment about this. Jesus, the image of the invisible God. In the Greek, the word image here is the word icon, which sounds an awful lot like our word for icons, where we get it from. You think about an icon, what that is, kind of the definition of that, it makes sense. Also, if you've been attending Pastor Josh's Wednesday night Bible study, a couple weeks ago, he did Exodus 24, verses 9 through 11. That is where Moses and some of the, at the time, elders of Israel go and they eat and drink with a physical, visible manifestation of God, which that's kind of a something I think like gets overlooked because like until he taught on that passage, I don't think I'd ever heard that particular aspect of the Exodus before, that they actually eat and drink, kind of taking communion with the physical form of God. And the reason why that struck me is because everywhere else in the Exodus, in that part of the narrative, it's all God on the mountaintop, smoke, thunder, fire, not someone that you can sit and they could actually see. So just put a little note here for Exodus 24. All right, someone was calling out the next one. Was that you?
Firstborn of all creation.
So, Jesus. All right, anyone have any thoughts on him being described as the firstborn of all creation, given that just like 10 minutes ago we talked about Jesus being before all things in creation? Seem odd to you?
A little bit complicated to explain.
Yeah, it seems almost like a paradox. You know, he's before creation, but also the firstborn of creation.
So, and that is if we look at firstborn in the literally, like you are literally the first person to be born, like, you know, like Caleb is my firstborn. Firstborn is more than just a literal descriptor. It's also a title that can be applied. And if you happen to have the ESV Study Bible, it should cross-reference you to, where is it? Where is it? Sorry, it'll plug. Psalm 89:27. And this is kind of the example they're giving to show why this descriptor is being used. It says, "I will make him the firstborn, the highest of the kings on earth." Now that psalm is not expressly about Jesus, it's actually about David. David was not the firstborn of his family. So, but here he's being described and ascribed the title of firstborn. So it's not necessarily literally being used as like Jesus was the first created being. And that's an important distinction. I don't know if anyone else was downtown yesterday at all afternoon. We went for the duck race. The Jehovah's Witnesses were there in force in downtown yesterday. Multiple stands, a lot of people probably because they knew a lot of people would be there for the duck derby. And this is an area that they get stuck on. They say that this means that Jesus is therefore a created being and is therefore not superior to creation. And that's obviously changes radically their perception of who Jesus is rather than what we see him as, what Orthodox Christianity says he is. So they take this literally. They don't do the exegetical work to actually say, like, what does it mean to be firstborn? Well, Jesus is the one who's sitting at the right hand of the Father, like the firstborn son would sit at the right hand of his Father in that culture. So it takes a little more work than.
I don't think it's that hard a concept to understand if you just look at the terminology. We're all children of God, right, in a sense. But Jesus is the Son of God.
Yeah.
I think the phrase they tend to use is what? Jesus is eternally begotten of the Father. That's the way I've heard it phrased in certain areas of theology. Yeah. But that doesn't mean he's created.
Yeah.
He's still God. He's still part of the Trinity. But,
yeah. And also John 1 helps us with this too. In the beginning was the Word was with God, and the Word was God. And he is expressly talking about Jesus there. That's the entire thesis of his gospel.
Oh, and even in verse 17, he is before all things, and in him all things hold together.
Mm-hmm. Well, that'll end up right here too in just a minute. But yeah, so I bring up the Jehovah's Witness thing just to see how if you get locked in on one word and you don't take it in consideration of the rest of the, not even the rest of the Bible, just the rest of the passage, you can end up in a really wrong place. So thank you for pointing that out. We'll get that down here in just a second. So Jesus is the firstborn of all creation. What's next? So verse 16. So Jesus.
In him all things were created.
Yep. By him all things were created. Okay. Next. So verse 17. So he's before all things. All right.
We did that as a comparison, but can we put it back down, like verse 18? The head of the body?
Yeah, absolutely. It's a truth claim too. What does it mean for Jesus to be the head of the church? What does that mean? Because he's obviously not literally a head. So what does it mean?
I mean, if you're, like, as a person, if you're brain dead, like, the rest of your body can't do anything. Like in the sense, like, the most important and crucial part of it.
Yeah, okay, yes. So he's the most important part, but the head is where the decisions are made, or that's what's in charge, or that's where the authority is derived from, because that's what the head tells the body what to do, right? Mm-hmm. So it's an authority thing as well as an instructional thing. So we do what he says through his word.
Don't we also have another, like, I guess, euphemism or, analogy, like the church is the wife of
The church is the bride of Christ.
the bride,
Yes.
yes. So,
Yes.
and then, the husband is typically the leader.
The head of the household. Yeah.
So,
Yeah. That's true as well. That's true as well. Those two would go together well. Yeah.
I almost said Jesus is the cornerstone, but that doesn't really help. Just switch his head for
Well,
cornerstone.
it's true. That is a true statement. It doesn't appear in this passage, but that is a true statement. Yeah, there's the 7 I ams. I can't remember if cornerstone is cornerstone one of the I ams. I'm blanking on that. I'm
No.
the gate. I'm the vine. I'm the way.
No.
I'm the good shepherd. Ooh, I'll Google it later. Okay. All right. So Jesus is the head of the church. That was verse 18. There's some more in verse 18. Someone want to call it out for me?
he is the beginning.
Yep. And this is echoing what, like we talked about, this echoes what John said. In the beginning was the Word, and the Word was with God. Okay.
The firstborn from the dead.
Yes. Now that one is less controversial, I guess I would say. It's less easy to take it out of context, because what does he mean by firstborn from the dead? It's not a trick question. Just tell me.
A resurrection.
On the third day.
Yep, from the dead. Exactly. So that one's a little less tricky, because that one's extremely clear given the resurrection. All right. So firstborn from the dead. What else? On 17, where he said he is before all things, I'm going to add, because it also says, in him all things hold together. So what would that mean exactly? Does anyone Can anyone think of a verse that kind of speaks to this truth? He holds all things together.
Psalm 8.
Okay.
Oh Lord, how majestic is your name. When I look at the work of your fingertips. And then verse 5 says, what is man that you are mindful of him, that you care for him, that you place him a little lower than the heavenly beings and crown him in glory and honor.
Awesome. I completely agree with that. And then I think of Hebrews 1:3. Not Hebrews 3:3, Hebrews 1:3. It says, he is the radiance of the glory of God and the exact imprint of his nature, and he upholds the universe by the word of his power. After making purification for sins, he sat down at the right hand of the majesty on high, having become as much superior to angels, the name he's inherited is more excellent than theirs. But that's a great one too. Yeah, I just think of Hebrews 1:3 first, as he upholds the universe by the word of his power. So all this is upheld by the word of Jesus. All right, so we had firstborn from the dead. That was verse 18. All right, and then verse 19. Anything in verse 19?
You're talking about all the fullness should dwell?
Yep. So all the fullness of God dwelt in him.
But also remember, it says was pleased to dwell in him.
Okay. Yep. So this is not a phrase we would use a lot. Anyone want to take a stab at the meaning behind that? What does it mean for the fullness of God to be dwelling in Jesus when he was here? Anyone want to take a stab at what that would mean exactly?
He was entirely God and entirely man.
Yes. So there's no 50-50. He's 100-100. Does that make sense?
Trinitarian passage. It's a Trinitarian passage in a sense.
Yes. Yeah, I like that. I'm just going to put. Yeah, I like that. It's a good descriptor.
Because I think of the verse when Jesus says, "If you've seen me, you've seen the Father," and so Jesus is talking about.
And how could that be true if it wasn't?
God,
if it wasn't,
is what he's saying.
Oh, yeah,
exactly.
Great.
Doesn't it in the same breath it also says I and the Father are one?
Yes,
yeah.
There's the same
You can
verse
use that
as
as well too.
Right.
Yeah. I'll put. Very good. Excellent, both of you. Okay. All the fullness of God was pleased to dwell. All right, and then, all right, anything in verse 20?
To reconcile all things to himself. I don't know how you want to word that, because that kind of like, it's almost like it's split into two pieces. Because reconcile all things to himself, having made peace through the blood of his cross. If you want to kind of tie it in and skip a little bit of the middle section of that verse.
So
how do you want to word that?
So Jesus is reconciling or has reconciled. All things through the cross. Yeah, that's kind of an awkward phrase to get up there. Okay. All right, and then we have 21 in you who were once alienated and hostile in mind, doing evil deeds. He is now reconciled in his body of flesh by his death in order to present you holy and blameless and above reproach before him. I think we can probably summarize all of that. I think we can condense that basically into Jesus' death. Jesus' death of the flesh has reconciled believers. All right. Otherwise, we'd be writing that whole paragraph down. Okay? Any other truth claims in the passage after that?
That the hope of the gospel has been proclaimed in all creation.
Exactly. I did not get a chance to do this yet. Hopefully I'll get to this week. I want to revisit when this letter was written. I think we wanted to say 60 to 62, right? Is that what we talked about?
Yeah.
80, 60, 62. I want to take a look at what do we know of the apostles and their missions at that point in time, because this phrase is interesting to me, because obviously the gospel was not in North America. Now, we would excuse Paul because he didn't know that existed. And so my going into the research I want to do, my thinking is what he means by that is the known world at the time. So the Roman Empire, basically, and whatever little was beyond that. But I want to see if I can find whatever we know about the other apostolic journeys the other disciples were on by that point in time, to see what exactly in all creation would have meant to Paul. I think that'd be interesting to know what he meant by that. We know here, because we have the advantage of being about 2,000 years later, we know that there's quite a bit more than Paul would have necessarily realized to the earth. But we understand his meaning, is that it's gone out to everywhere that he knew there was to go at that point in time. All right. That was the last truth claim I had on the list, but if there's anything prior to that, by all means, call it out and we'll add it to the list. Otherwise, we will, let's see, we got 1034, we got, yeah, I think we can move on unless someone's got something to add here. Okay. So technically, the next section is significant words and phrases.
Yeah, that.
Yeah. Literally in my notes it says the entire preceding section. So I would say our truth claims pretty much handles our significant words and phrases alongside, a good portion of our repeated words and phrases, because basically we're just going to be writing the same thing down again. This passage is really great in that he's laid out a lot of important stuff. We're about out of time for this Sunday. I do want us to hit any literary features we see, and that'll probably conclude our time today. But I'm super excited for y'all because I won't be here, but y'all will get to go through the meaning and the application to the original audience and to ourselves through this. So definitely what I would probably recommend y'all do, Andrew, is maybe when you're talking about the no, be, and do stuff over here, maybe put a collection of some of the most important things on this side, so that as you're talking, you can kind of revisit.
Just go back and revisit.
I'd recommend that. It'll make it easier rather than everyone looking at their phone and zooming on the picture from this week. All right, so any literary features we observe here, rhetorical questions or statements, hyperbole, metaphors, anything like that? Literary features that we would want to observe?
The firstborn, is that a metaphor, an analogy?
Do we have an English major in here? Wait, do we?
It's a
No, I teach math.
Yeah, Callie.
No.
Well, you're a teacher. That puts you a ways ahead of the rest of us.
It's something.
So let's do this. Let's do firstborn. All right.
Symbolic.
I think I like that best, rather than metaphor or analogy.
Kelly's a librarian.
It's symbolism.
Yes.
Would that apply?
Symbolism. There we go.
Kelly, come on, Kelly.
Yeah. Why did our librarian leave?
Librarian.
I feel like the head would be a metaphor.
Yeah.
Cause that's like he is.
What are we talking
Yeah,
about?
he is. So it's a metaphor.
It is.
If it be,
okay.
it's like
Simile.
Yep, and that's the one that I had. I did look, after a long absence, the word chiasm is going to reappear in our life group.
I think I have like a roughed out structure one. I feel like there's going to be a lot more I could expand, but I haven't done any of that.
It's a long one. From what I looked into it, it's long.
I think I have a decent way. It could be like, there's like some bullet, like a simple one, but I definitely think if I looked more into it, it would be a lot deeper.
If anyone wants, I can send the link to the research that I did on it. It includes part of the preceding chunk as well. I'll let Matt give his version because I have no reason to doubt that he's got it.
Matt, can you explain what a chiasm
Excellent.
is? Or somebody can explain what chiasm is, so we have a few new
Can
people.
someone else do it while I'm writing?
It's like a point sandwich.
Yes.
Like,
Yes.
So basically, it's like, it kind of goes like A, B, C, D, and then D is the center point that they're trying to express, and then it goes back out like CBA.
Yeah.
So it's like getting to the point and then backing back out of it.
But the A and the B and the C will all mirror each other. Have you been in here since we talked about this? No. Yeah. So it's a point. It is a getting to the point sandwich. So whatever main idea that's trying to be expressed in the passage, it's going to be at the center of this thing. But on the outside, there's going to be points that mirror one each other, and that's why we're using ABC CBA. And actually, we're literally using ABCD CBA today. Sometimes it's not that long. It could be ABCBA. It could be even longer than that.
So it's like
there are entire books of the Bible written in that format.
So you're starting wide and then you focus and you come back out again, kind of. Is that, okay.
Yeah. It's like they lead up to the main point and then they come back out of it.
And then walk back out of it too.
We're kind of reinforcing it as they go. Okay. That's kind of the idea.
Yep. And Matt's got the same one that I've got. Yeah. Go ahead.
Okay. So yeah, it's bookended with creation. That 15 and 20. Okay. 20. No, creation's down at 23. But
so creation. We're starting and ending with creation.
Right. And then we have a line about heaven and earth, and towards the end it says earth and heaven. So even those are flip flopped. Then we have all things times 2, all things times 2, and right in the middle is verse 18.
Okay. And verse 18 is, and he is the head of the body of the church. He is the beginning, the firstborn from the dead, that in everything he might be preeminent. Thank you, sir. And if you've got an ESV Bible, at least the section heading is called the Preeminence of Christ. So that's another little way that reinforces what the point is. So verse 18 is the point, and I'll put preeminence. Preeminence. So thank you. Perfect. Yep. So it's been a minute since we had a chiasm to write on the board. Feels good. It's good to do it again. They're a little more prevalent in the Old Testament than they are in the New, but there's plenty in the New Testament too. We just haven't encountered one in a while. All right. So in our section, we have this benefit where we can see exactly what the point is. Verse 18. All right. I think we are out of time.